Welcome back to the Jesus Cartel, where I have now taken my rightful place as the host of the #1 podcast in all of Winsboro. I tell you what, man, this is a long time coming. Andrew's body is decaying on him as we speak and unable to perform the duties of host today. So I am here to save the day. Your host, Clay Russell. And look, with me today, I have two guests because it takes two guests when you have such a great host, Mr. Drew Wiggers and Mr. Ryan Kincaid. How you doing, guys?
Oh, doing great today, Clay.
It's a good day.
You doing good, Ryan?
Yeah.
Good. You know, these are two guests that we've had individually before on the show, but on Drew's show that we had a monsoon, right, Drew?
We did.
Yeah, so it was a little distracting. Audio didn't come out quite right. The guy that kind of produces this show and gets everything right couldn't get it all together, and so we had to just show a shorter version of that show. So we brought Drew back on today. We gave him a lot of notice. We told him today, right?
Yeah, I had a whole hour to prepare. So.
But we didn't give you anything to prepare. So,
No.
Hey, it is what it is. So, Ryan, tell me what's been going on with you.
Well, I'm in the same boat as Drew. This morning I found out relatively early today that we were going to be doing this Jesus Cartel podcast, which, like I mentioned to you earlier, I needed it. I'm tired today. I ain't even going to lie, man. Just tired. I don't know why. Just worn out.
Is it strictly body weight, you think? Or?
I think it has a lot to do with it. Yeah. Carrying around a lot more body weight.
Maybe that's why I feel better this
It can
morning.
drag.
So you're happy to be here, huh?
Happy to be here.
Okay.
Things been going well. Big question I get a lot lately is about my son. He had that wreck probably about 2 months ago, and he is A-okay. Back to normal.
Amen.
The kids are resilient. Man, God worked really, really well in that situation. And it could have been a lot worse. Wasn't. He's back to doing normal things.
So full recovery.
Oh, yeah. Full.
Okay. All right, well, that's good. Drew, how are things with you?
Man, can't complain.
What you got going on?
Nothing, man. Just, I say nothing. We're kind of shut down the farm work now, so now it's pretty much just, I'm actually having to be a parent for a change.
Okay.
I can't use that work excuse with Sonny anymore.
Right.
So I have to take kids here and there and yonder. Do
So
day-to-day
she's
care.
out actually working.
Yes, while I stay
Yeah.
home and, be a housewife.
I got you. So a very important question that everybody wants to know. Is the house cleaner now that you're in that role, or is it cleaner when she's in that role?
I would say it's 50-50. We
Really?
both put off as much as we can until the house cleaner gets there, which happens to be today. We pick up enough stuff that she can mop the floors, and then when we get home, it smells wonderful.
I got you. Fair enough. Good answer. Good answer. Well, look, I'd like to ask, did you bring any sponsors with you today?
I did actually.
Okay.
As of last time, Wiggers Farm Partnership, since I'm here, we're sponsoring, again, White Ford, Lincoln here in Winsboro, and actually Matt Rayleigh,
Okay.
talked with him, and he said, hey man, you wear my hat, I'll give you $500 towards the podcast.
So was that an individual sponsorship, or did he do that through Pioneer?
Oh no, that was through Pioneer. He wouldn't use his own money, of course.
Okay.
I
Ryan,
have.
did you bring any
I did.
sponsorships?
McCarty Coconut Oil,
Okay.
from the generous family of Tyler McCarty. So I want to thank you. Thank you, Tyler, for your
Amen.
generous donations.
Amen. Do you know what level sponsorship that was, or did they just say they do whatever?
He just whatever.
Okay.
Platinum level.
He doesn't know that yet, but he does now.
Hey, that's a good thing. Well, something exciting for me today is my youngest child's 17th birthday. So happy birthday to Cooper. Cooper's truck broke down last night, and this morning he got a new phone and tried to get it going too quick, and it completely shut everything down. So on his 17th birthday, he has no truck and he has no phone. But other than that, I'm sure it's a great day being at school.
He's roughing it.
Yeah, I'm sure it's fine.
First world problems.
Well, look, I have a very interesting get to know you segment question that I came up with all by myself this morning.
So proud of you.
Yeah, there's a few seasons in life that I like better than others, right? Football season is my favorite season. and hunting season is my second favorite season. And we are, in football season, just kind of got rid of that on the high school level and stuff. LSU's not playing a lot right now, but it is full-fledged hunting season. So here is my question, because when y'all were first on here, we asked you, what is your favorite thing about me and Andrew? And it really took too much time. So we're not going to ask y'all that again. I know y'all wanted to go for a part 2. So here is my question. I want to know the story behind the first time that you shot a deer. I want to know how old you were. I want to know where you were. I want to know the story. Guys love telling deer hunting stories, and now here's y'all's opportunity to tell yours.
Well, mine's great. I'm just go ahead and start off since I'm
Yeah,
first
Go
down the
for
line on
it.
the table.
I figured, it might have took you a long time to remember because you might
No,
so long ago.
because I have told this one many
Okay,
times.
well, let's tell it again.
Great aspects to it. So my dad takes me. I was 10 years old. Dad takes me down on the farm. So we drove 7-8 minutes from the house.
Mm-hmm.
His old GMC half-ton jacked up mud truck. We get down there, we jump out, and we get in my uncle's stand. And the first deer that walks out, I was sitting there, I was like, Dad, can I shoot it? And he's just like, yeah, son, go ahead, And so I'm sitting here thinking, didn't have horns or anything, but man, it was this huge doe. And I was like, man, I'm fishing to drop this doe. And so he just got me a 6mm for my for my birthday, in October. This is 1st of November. We get out there. We shot it a few times, had it sighted in. Kind of had to let Dad sight it in. I didn't do too good at that. Mm-hmm. So we got out there, saw her, big doe. I'm fishing to shoot her. Get out the window, shot, dropped her.
Okay.
And Dad's like, man, son, that is awesome. Good job. So he gets down, I get down, we go get in the truck. We drive out there to the doe. And my dad is, he's about an inch taller, about 20 or 30 pounds on me now. He's a pretty good sized guy. And he reached down and gets this huge doe, and I'm sitting there thinking, how are we gonna load this thing up? I'm kind of small, my dad's pretty strong, you got a jacked up truck, I'm gonna have to hop in a bed, we're gonna do all this stuff. My dad reaches down with one hand, grabs the back leg, and just and throws this 45-pound yearling over the tailgate of the truck. And I was just, my heart just sank. I was like, I thought I just killed this really big deer, and my dad just one arms it over in the back. I mean, he lifts it over top of his head. It's like a pendulum just swinging over. And I'm like, what are we going to do? Like, I can't tell people that I shot this little bitty deer from my first deer. So we run home, and my dad's got all these antlers screwed on the wall in his workshop at our house. And he just goes up there and he gets a screwdriver and he takes drywall out the center of one of these skull mounts, and he takes and he screws it on top of the head of this doe. And then he goes and gets my mom from inside, and he's like, Julia, come out here, look, see this deer that Drew killed. And we had this little 5-point rack about like this screwed on top of the head. So it's just this white thing on top of a brown head. Mom's like, oh, wow, baby, you killed a buck. And I was like, yeah, Mom, look at it. It's so awesome. And she doesn't even recognize what's going on, doesn't even realize anything. And I finally grab it and I go, look, watch what this is. I said, it's a trick deer. Watch this. And I took it and started spinning the horn round and round and round. So anyway, that was my first deer killing experience.
So next up on Jesus Cartel, watch as Ryan tries to top that story. What a story.
How old were you 10 when you got your first deer? All right, well, I got you beat on that aspect at least. My first deer that I killed, I was 35 years old.
There you go.
And so this was actually last year. Was the first time I'd ever gone hunting. There were some deer hunting. I've been duck hunting in the past when I lived in Lafayette. But for obvious reasons, I had to pause my hunting privileges. And so I got them back last year, and I went deer hunting for the first time. So Danny Wallace took me out deer hunting on my anniversary, my wedding anniversary. So that was pretty cool. I remember this because Miss Sheila wanted to smear blood all over me, and I had a reservation at Doe's, and I was like, hey, I can't show up at Doe's with blood all over me. Sheila, what are you doing? But so I was so excited. I was so happy to get to go hunting. It was myself, Danny, Brad, and Canaan was with us. And so we're in the stands, and I ain't got a clue what to do. I'm sitting in the stand. I'm texting. We got a big group.
Are you by yourself?
I'm by myself in the stand.
Man.
And we got this group chat going. And, I mean, I remember asking Danny, like, hey, because it's still pitch black outside, right? And I'm like, Danny, which way do I need to be facing? Like, I don't even know which way to look in the stand. And he's like, Ryan, just look towards the door. You need to be facing the door. You're going to be okay. I'm like, all right. When do I get to shoot something? And Brad responds something. Well, you got to wait for the sun to come up first. I don't know. You know Brad. And so we sat there all morning, and we saw they were seeing deer. I wasn't seeing any deer. And so it comes down time for us to start packing up and start getting out. And Canaan jumps out of his stand, which is probably about, I don't know, I'm not even going to try to guess how far it is. But whenever he jumped out of his stand, he spooked a deer. And that deer took off running. And so in the group chat, he texted, and I've got proof of this, he texted, huge 6-point, just ran off running towards Ryan's stand. And so whenever he said that, I knew where his stand was. I'm looking out the window. I'm waiting for this deer to come out. And sure enough, this deer comes out in the lane, doesn't stop, hit it on the run, it drops. Maybe 14 yards from the stand.
Did you step that off? That's a really exact number.
Oh, look, it was every bit of from here to that exit door right there.
I don't think the camera can see that.
And so after I shot it, you know, I said, got him. What do I do now? Do I need to go get the deer? Danny's like, no, just stay put. You're doing good. And so everybody else comes up. We go look at this massive deer, this huge 6-point that I just killed that ended up being a little 5-point with horns. I mean, I couldn't even hold the horns because you couldn't see the horns. Brad told me to take my hands down so they could see the horns when I shot it.
It sounds like we killed about the same deer.
Brad said he still had milk on his lips. And so that was my first deer I ever shot. Now, and I'm glad you specified shot, because I killed 3 deer before that, just in vehicles. So yeah, but that's the first time that I actually shot a deer, and I'm hoping to get another one soon.
Hey, that's the reason why I wanted to ask that question today, is because I knew that Drew had bound to kill his early, and I knew when you shot your first one. And so, hey, that's just want to tell people that it's never too late, right? You always have that opportunity. My story and your story is very similar. You know, I didn't hunt when I was young and didn't hunt until I was later and older. And so, hey, but we enjoy it now. It's something that I get to do with my son, and it's pretty cool. And tell me...
You don't want to share the story about killing doe on our farm or anything, do you?
I was trying to think about that story, and I couldn't even remember it good enough to tell that story. I remember the aftermath, but I couldn't remember the first part. But when you were telling that story, I was like, man, I'm going to tell that. But did we find that deer?
No.
Okay. See, that's
not
what
till
I remember.
like a day or two later.
Okay. So, yeah. So I had a hunting experience on Wigger's farm that ended in me getting pretty angry and a couple days later. So we won't go into that story. But no, man, just something to enjoy. But a follow-up question there. So, Drew, you hunt with family and stuff, out there on Wigger's farms because y'all are rich. And and Ryan, you're hunting with Danny and them, and y'all have a group there. And I'm also in a hunting group. Can you tell me? One of the coolest things about that is text threads. You got your hunting group text messages. Can you tell me something cool that somebody's put on a hunting group text message, or a text message you thought was interesting, or anything like that, or a conversation y'all had? Anything like that?
All of our conversations end up getting funneled back into the huge 6-point that I killed last year.
It all goes back to that point, right?
Everything will come back to that point. It never fails. Doesn't matter what I say. I could be talking about the geese that are flying above, and somebody's going to chime in. I'm not going to say his name. It starts with a B, rhymes with rad. But no, I always get a hard time for that. Or, man, I'm still learning all this. And so it's really cool learning. about how to be a deer hunter, how to hunt deer, and this and that. And so I tend to ask stupid questions sometimes, I guess, or say stupid stuff. And like this morning in the office, I made a comment about the deer's teeth. And first thing out of Clay's mouth this morning was like, Ryan, we know this already. And I thought it was a cool thing. I'm like, man, you can really tell how old a deer is by its teeth. That's the best way to do it. Yeah, we know.
It's hard to do that when they're alive.
We are. They usually don't stop and let you check their molar.
That's right.
So that's usually what our conversations are always about, me and my amateurism in deer hunting.
Right.
And I get picked at a lot for that, but man, I ain't nobody better. I'd rather learn how to hunt under than Danny Wallace.
Yeah.
I mean, truly.
So I got a good one from last year, and it really ties into my first hunting experience.
Okay.
So I took David Michael hunting last year, and it was a meat hunt. So I said, look, I told him, if it's a buck, 6 points or better, it's going to be a little lenient that day, close to the ears, and didn't have to be an 8-point outside. I said, or a doe. And I said, really a doe, man. You see the first doe you see, make sure it's a big doe and shoot it, so we can get some meat. Okay, Daddy. So I gave him my iPad so he could text me back and forth as I'm hunting. Mm-hmm. And I said, look, and I told him, when I dropped him off, I told him on the text thread, I was like, look, make sure it's a big doe. I'm not cleaning a 65-pound yearling tonight. And he said, okay. And so when he got in the stand and everything, he texted me, he said, look, I said, if you shoot a doe, make sure you shoot a big doe. Yes, sir. So he has one come out on him. He texts me, hey, Dad, I got a deer. I'm like, okay, all right, buddy. I said, well, is it a doe? Yes, sir, it's a doe. I said, all right, is it a big doe? Yeah, but it's only one. I was like, okay, well, it's best to let another deer come out so you can kind of gauge the size of them. It's hard to tell just one deer off in the woods down, it was down a hill from him out in the hills. And he said, oh, yeah, Daddy, it's a big one. I was like, all right, buddy, so go ahead and shoot. So I'm not maybe a quarter mile from him, a little further, and I hear, I was like, all right, buddy, you hit it. He said, oh, Daddy, did I hit it? I dropped it. And I was like, oh, man, heart starts beating. Proud, oh, man, proud father moment, for sure. And he's like, what do I do now? I was like, you sit there and wait, and I hunt for horns. And so it gets dark. I go over there and I pick him up. And it's the same experience I had with my father. I drive the side-by-side down the hill down there to the deer. I pick it up with one hand and throw it over the back of the side-by-side. And I was like, son, I'm not cleaning this deer. And we went all the way back to the camp, and he cleaned that entire deer all by himself from start to finish.
Oh, my.
It was a
How
great
old was
learning
he?
experience. He was 11 then. He's 12 now. So, good to my word, I did not clean a 65-pound yearling that night.
I like it. That's good stuff. No, man, getting into something like that and not being the smartest at it is a thing. Like I said, I started deer hunting at older age and just completely green, and which goes back to the Wiggers Farm story and a lot of other stories I could tell. Hey, still learning something, and learn, young enough to be able to teach my son, and still grow and everything. But yeah, most of our text threads have to do with who's sitting on the wrong stand, because now we got all these cameras. Yep. And it doesn't matter if we have 2 hunters out there or 6 hunters out there, the deer are all on the stands that we're not sitting at, on different cameras, and it doesn't matter. It's just the way it is.
Do you have cell cameras?
We do.
So you're getting them as you're hunting?
Yes.
Isn't that annoying?
Yeah, it's annoying, and but anyhow, it is what it is.
Don't get me started on annoying. I'll just show you a couple of pictures that my 10-year-old son has killed, and you talk about annoying.
That is something that I wasn't going to bring up, but now that you did, Ryan's son that, like I said, is 10 years old, is quite the deer slayer, but he never kills them with Ryan. And so now he told Ryan that he would take him hunting, but Carter is quite the deer slayer, right?
He's given me a lot of good pointers that I use.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of waiting for that big one to come out.
Okay.
That's all it is. Now, he got one this year, I think, hanging up at weighed 262.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's every year. Every year. But no, he's
So you're just not holding your mouth right?
something. That's something. So I ain't quite sure yet.
He's shooting too quick when that dough comes out. All right, so last week, Andrew and I, when we had the old host, we had a holiday episode where we talked about, pumpkin spice. Just real quick, rapid fire. Pumpkin spice, yes or no?
No.
No.
Nope.
No, okay. So good. Oh, y'all can stay on the show. We'll continue. And I just want to make sure. And then we talked about how to handle holidays and stuff. Holidays aren't always the easiest things. You might be around people that, you choose not to be around the rest of the year, but you have to be around them at holidays, and just talked about kind of how to navigate that and stuff. But today I want to get back to the article that we read that we started with Drew on the episode where our producer failed us. But so we talked about it was dads raising sons, but at the same time we talked about it could be, any kids. It's just good things for life. And so the first one, that we talked about is teaching them how to think for themselves. We talked about that episode and talked about some examples that we've done with our children. And then last week the week before last, we talked about standing for truth or absolute truth. Them not getting wavered by the world, but standing for what they believe. And today, the topic was to remind him of what true manhood looks like. And so that's what I want to talk about today is how can we teach our sons or our children, because girls need to know what a real man looks like too, right? We've talked about that with Andrew before. And with me, I was a girl dad way before I was a boy dad, and enjoyed being a girl dad. And Andrew the same way, and Drew is kind of flip-flop for you,
Exactly.
But, these are good for everybody. But, how do we teach our sons? Well, let's just do it this way. Let's start this way with Drew. What is true manhood? What was your first thought be there?
So usually when I get asked a question like that, my first thought is, what is the world's conception or perception of that? And I think a lot of it, we look forward. We open with hunting, and in the South, that's what we think. I was the epitome of that guy at the church. Hey, look at that big burly guy. Who's that big burly guy over there with the big beard and the camouflage, and he drives a truck and goes to church and whatever else. And we kind of get a perception of a man that does masculine things, and to me, that's not the definition of manhood. A man is, someone who's responsible, someone that's honorable, that tells the truth, somebody that takes care of his family and puts them ahead of other people. A man is someone that goes to church, that leads his family in the way of the Lord. Those are the ideals that I see as manhood, but not what the world sees as masculinity.
Right. So when you're teaching your sons, do you talk about those things with them? Do you talk about, hey, this may be what the world says, but this is what we say on this? Yeah,
and so normally we don't just. There's rare occasions we'll just dive off into a random subject like that, but normally it's specific examples. Something happens, and I'm like, teachable moment right here. And so we'll have that conversation, but it's usually in a teachable moment that I'll see something wrong, say, hey, you see what happened here? You told me this happened at school or whatever. And I'm like, no, this is what you should be doing. This is what real men do in that situation. This is what fathers need. I had an example, one of his buddies' dad and parents got divorced here a while back. And so, man, that was a great moment for us to sit there and talk about, hey, this is what a family looks like. This is, when times get tough, this is not what we do. This is not what your mother and I, we talked about how he and his mother and I, we have a covenant marriage and what that meant and what that looked like, and that we put God first. And, whether we disagreed on stuff, we weren't getting a divorce. Don't you worry about that.
Right.
And just stuff like that. But we find teachable moments to teach masculinity and what a man looks like.
Yeah, being able to look at something else where somebody else made mistakes and be able to still learn from that. Yeah. And I remember when y'all had those conversations, me and you had talked about that, and that was, hey, that's a good moment there to be able to teach them.
And to reassure our kids that, look, your mom and dad have already agreed before we got married that that was not an option in our marriage.
Right.
And you don't have to worry about going through what your friend's going through in that situation.
Amen. Amen. Now, Ryan, you're coming from a different angle. You've been a stepdad just for a few years now. How do you teach Carter, to what true manhood looks like as a stepdad?
Yeah. Well, first off, whenever I think of manhood, I think the first two things that come to my mind are leadership and integrity.
Okay.
And it's funny that you talked about, this is something that's teachable to women and all groups of people as well, because it's actually, I think I can credit Stephanie Campbell for giving me the biggest lesson on integrity that I've ever learned.
Okay.
And I mean that sincerely. And just being a man of
You want to elaborate on that, or?
Yes,
Nope.
I will. Because it really wasn't anything big. They had just moved into their house out in Turtleneck.
Excuse me, I live right above them, and they're not quite in Turtleneck. That's south of us.
Well, what would you?
So what would you call it?
What would you call it?
They are the gatekeepers of Turtleneck.
And they also have, they have the mountain of Turtleneck now too.
They do.
So
You can see Turtleneck from the mountain.
But yeah, so they just moved out there, and they had some electrical stuff that they wanted worked on, and I told Stephanie and Joe I'd go help them with it. And lo and behold, I got out there, and it ended up being quite a headache. Just the stuff that was going on out there was nothing ordinary. And so
Talking about the wiring?
the wiring, man, it's just some weird stuff. Weird stuff. And
I at first I thought you was talking about Joe. You're not
Joe
talking
is
about Joe
weird.
being weird. You're talking about the wiring.
no,
And I'll apologize.
Joe is gonna be weird.
That was my
That's
great
just-
uncle's house, and there's no telling what he did to get
Oh,
everything going.
I can tell you what I did one time. There were the lights in the living room. Because I was an electrician for 10 years. I know what I'm doing. I'm not gonna say I'm the best, but I know what I'm doing. And I took the hot wire off of one of the switches in the living room, and I was undoing this switch box to see why the lights weren't working. That hot wire accidentally touched the sheetrock on the outside of the switch box, and when it touched the sheetrock, every light in the living room came on.
Come on.
I took the wire off the sheetrock, lights went out. Put it back on the sheetrock, and all lights
And
came
for our
on.
viewers here, sheetrock is not a good conductor of electricity.
No, that
correct?
ain't supposed to happen. No. And so that it was, but so anyway, and it took a couple of weeks to go out there and get the stuff done. And there was one last thing I needed to do, and there were other things in my schedule that were coming up that I kind of wanted to do more. And Stephanie was getting impatient with me, and she just flat out told me, "Look, you said you were going to do this. Be a man of integrity. Do what you said you was going to do." And I really did. Like it was something that has stuck with me, and I've learned from it. And so whenever it comes to Carter, my son, being a man of your word is something that I try to implement in him as often as possible. I am coming from a unique position where, although his mom and dad are divorced, he still his father's very active. He's a good father. He is. And so I don't have to necessarily step into that role of being the masculine role model and teach you how you need to be present in your family as the man. But there are instances where I get to teach him based off of what he's going through when he's in our care.
And you're still a role model every time that he is.
Absolutely.
For sure. He's
And-
still looking at you.
Oh yeah, and there's nothing like he's my stepson, but he's my son. I never think of him as a stepson.
Yeah.
One thing that I'm really big on, or a way that I can teach him a lot, is to help him learn by doing. Something that you said in that previous lesson, where if he wants to help, or if he wants to learn how to do something, or wants me to do something for him, I make sure that I use a 3-step process where I'll show him how to do it, then I'll watch him do it, and then from that point on, hey, I don't want you to have to rely on me. I want you to be able to know these things yourself. That way, one day, you have that knowledge. And so that's another aspect that I really try to help him out with, because he's a brilliant kid. I think he's just like a lot of kids our age. He gets sidetracked into things that he wants to do, and maybe not necessarily the things that he should be doing. But that's kids. He can't understand what he needs to be doing at that point in time without the help. And then he's got a great mom. You know, my wife helps him out tremendously in that area, keeps him on track. And so I'd say those two things, the leadership and the integrity, that's two things that I hope if he learns from me, that it sticks with him for life.
Yeah, those are big deals, man, and being able to learn that. And something that both of y'all said that I agree with 100% is that a lot of us saying that we teach our kids or teach our sons or teach, people and stuff isn't, a lesson. It isn't, us sitting down and, doing diagrams and stuff. It's just when we, when we have real life situations, we take those situations as teachable moments. Mm-hmm. And I think that so many times people just overlook those things. They those things are there for you. Hey, we hate that David Michael's friend's parents got divorced, but we got to have some good come out of it. Exactly. And so let's use that as a teachable moment. We hate that Carter had the ATV accident, but it happened, and now we got to learn from it. It's one thing to thank God that my parents didn't get divorced. It's another thing to thank God that Carter's still here with us. But on top of that, we need to be learning from these things. We need to be able to sit down and say, hey, now look, where did you go wrong here? Instead of just telling him everything that he did wrong with the ATV accident, we need to be able to look at it and say, okay, Carter, now what do you think the first mistake was? Well, what could you have done to prevent this? We want to teach you how to be a leader. A leader could stand up to other 10-year-olds, when this is given, and so we're not getting on you. We're just saying that for the future, we need to be able to work on this, and I'm sure those are some conversations y'all have had.
Absolutely. And one thing I'd love to say about that I've learned from him is it truly amazes me how pure kids' hearts are growing up. Like he has got such a heart to help other people, and he didn't have to be taught that.
Right.
That's something that he just has this innate intuition to want to help others. And it's something that's so cool to see that, that's what God has put in us. That's what he instilled in us, was to have that relationship with other people by any means necessary. Yeah. I'll give you an example. We were we went to Branson last weekend just for a little Thanksgiving trip, and we went to the arcade one night, played a bunch of arcade games, and they give you this little card, and he had some tickets on it, and I think there was like a little over 2,000 tickets on it. Well, he went to the little prize counter where all the stuff is, and he didn't see anything he wanted, and he was like, man, there's really nothing I want, and I think I just want to go give this to somebody. Mm-hmm. And so he went and found this little family that they were just having fun, and he just tapped the dad on the shoulder and was like, here, I want you to have this. And the little girl's face just lit up, like just couldn't believe it. And I didn't have to tell him to do that. Right. That was just something he wanted to do. And another thing, though, that I've learned is kids pay attention to everything you do. So teachable moments don't have to come by you saying, hey, all right, we need to talk about this. All right, we're going to learn something from this. No, they watch you no matter what. And so I learned that based off of a joke that I made when I first met him. He asked me a question about something. It was about some animal. Like, hey, why does this animal have stripes on its back or something like that? And I answered him something goofy that just didn't make sense. And then it was about 2 years later, he said the same thing. And his mom was like, what? And he was like, yeah, Ryan said that the reason they have stripes on their base is because, and I was like, oh, no, I was just joking. I'm glad it wasn't something bad. but and so I learned that he's always watching. And so I make sure that how he sees me and his mom interact, that he learns how to treat a woman based off of how I'm acting. And the way that I'm carrying myself, or the way I talk to her, or if we have a disagreement, or if we're spending time together, whatever it may be, I'm making sure that I live up to a standard that is something that I would want him to follow, because I know he's watching it. Yeah. And I know I don't have to sit there and say, see, Carter, you see how me and your mom just worked that out? You need to learn from that. No, he's already watching that.
Well,
paying
and that's a
attention.
very good point, and that's the point I want to bring up, and we'll let Drew answer this. Now, Drew, you talked about how the world sees, manhood and stuff, and how we see it different, and y'all both kind of talked about, some qualities, and we'll dive into those a little bit more. But how important is it to you to teach your sons to be a gentleman?
So, very, to answer the question, very important. And so, and it's not something, I guess I've taught it a little bit, but it's been more by example and just the smallest little things. I can't tell you how many times we've been sitting Subway, or a restaurant, and either one of my older two boys will see somebody in a wheelchair, somebody in a walker, or something like that, and they will run and go open that door for somebody that would need help. I don't even have to tell them anymore. And it's because I may have said it once or twice, but they see me in action when I see a need like that. And you just go do that, because that's what a gentleman should do. And that's in that situation. But it's the same thing as far as, the way I treat their mother. They don't see me and Sonny fighting.
Right.
We don't, and we don't fight anyway. But if we disagree on something, we're not going to do that for our children. But they also see the way I treat her with respect. And when she asks me to do something, that I don't just, I'll get to that later stuff. And when she asks me help for something, I'm going to go do that. And so we hadn't had that sit down yet. David Michael's getting right at that age. We're going to have to start talking about, hey, when we do have dates, what do we do? How do we treat a lady? And so honestly, that's something his mother and I have been talking about, that she's going to have to start taking him out on a few dates. Right. And it's something I'm really looking forward to with my little girl. I might be using a walker by the time she gets to that age. But is taking them out on dates and showing them what does it look like? What does it look like for you as a gentleman to take out another lady? How should you talk to her? How should you treat her? What topics should you talk about? Should you pull out her chair for her? Should you pay for the meal? All these things that, by example, sometimes I can teach, but, sometimes from the opposite sex, it comes a little better. Right. How would I like to be treated? So, yeah, we do those things, and they are very important for us, especially as they get older.
Right. I know, like with my girls, I dated both of my girls, and did it the right way. Asked them, hey, are you free Saturday night? Where would you like to go? What would you like to do? And didn't just assume that they wanted to go do those things, because I wanted them to feel loved and cherished, and I wanted them to know, this is how they're supposed to be treated, and so I remember, I would go out the back door and run around to the front and knock on the door and ask Cooper if if Elena was there and if she was ready and if I could come in the house, and this is, when they're teenagers, or younger and different things, because I don't ever want them to think that anybody should ever take them for granted. I
pull up to your house and honk the horn and then come running out.
We've never had any of those issues. And
I'm here.
Yeah, I'm here. Text, but yeah, we've never had any of those issues. And it's like so and so's here. How you know? They text me. No. We're not going to do any of that. So, but now with Cooper, having to work on that some now, and I'll talk more about that. But what about you, Ryan? Do you see teaching Carter to be a gentleman as an important thing?
Absolutely.
Okay.
And it's things that I've learned from people in the past that I want to instill in him, and just make sure that, because the women that we have in our lives, they are God's creation, and they're gifts to us. I would never think of my wife as anything less than an absolute blessing in my life. And I want to make sure that I cherish that and I think of it and treat it as something that is very not indisposable. Let me say it like that. I don't want to say it wrong. Right. As something to be valued, because it is something that I know that when God put her in my life, it was to bring my life to a new level, not to drag it down. And it's something that is not to be taken for granted. And so I want him to understand those things too. And, we have the same approach, which, we hadn't been married for very long, so we haven't really had any knockout, drag out fights, but there have been times where me and her have disagreed, And Carter's been present. And I love Carter watching how me and her work through that, where if we just disagree on something, and how he can see, okay, well, this one has this point of view, he has this point of view, what compromise are they going to come to? And him hearing me say, okay, well, I'm wrong in that. I shouldn't be thinking that way. You know, I want him to be able to understand that, hey, being wrong is okay. You don't have to be right all the time. Because I see it in him a lot. And that's every kid, is they don't like being wrong. It could be something that he should not know. But if he doesn't know it, he's like, oh, man, that's what I meant. You know, and it's like, dude, no, you're 10 years old. You're not going to know this.
Right.
And so I want him to understand that, hey, not having all the answers is okay.
Yeah.
You know, saying you're sorry is okay. You need to do those things.
But conflict resolution, and we're not just going to fight and get mad and just
Right.
walk away from it.
Absolutely.
That y'all sit there and work it out, and hey, one of us may have been right, one of us may have been wrong, or we just compromise on it. You
Yep.
know, and that's awesome.
And it's something like what Drew said about me, making sure that he sees that I respect her as, you know, leader of the household, and knowing that they look to me for leadership and guidance, but also understanding that my perception and my decision making is not going to be on my own. That if his mom has a good idea, or his mom wants to do something that we need to do, so be it, we'll do it. That it's not always, no, we're going to do this because I said so.
Right.
And that's something that I think treating women as a gentleman should, it comes in that. It comes with valuing them and understanding that, look, you are the leader, but that doesn't mean that you make all the decisions, and what you say has to go all the time.
Right.
And because he does have a smart mom who knows how to raise him.
Right.
And I like to make sure that he sees that.
Amen.
You know,
Well, you know, something that, you know, y'all's sons are kind of getting to the age that you can do and stuff, and Drew kind of alluded to it, is, you know, they both, all y'all's boys have mothers that love them, you know, and we know there's a true thing, you know, called mama's boys, you know, and
got 3 of them.
that's right, and we understand that Carter's that way, you know. There was a period of time where, you know, it was Carter and Morgan. Mm-hmm. You know, and that was the dynamic duo, you know, and then Ryan comes into that, and that can be, you know, that can be difficult, and they've done a great job navigating that. But I think that when your son starts getting the ages that we're talking about here, that, you know, we can start teaching them to not just look at their mama as a mother, but to, you know, start dating her, to start learning how to treat her more like a gentleman, instead of her waiting on him and her just taking care of his needs, but him helping her and taking care of her needs and stuff, you know, even going out on dates and stuff. I remember I was going to be in Africa for Valentine's Day, and so I got a gift card to Cotton's, and left it while I was gone, and left it for Cooper to be able to give his mom, you know. And so I had her Valentine's present ready to go, and explained to him, hey, this is what it is, this is how we're going to do it, da 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 da. And so instead of me giving it, it was him giving it, you know. And so he gave it to her and said, hey, look, you know, we're going to go out and eat on Tuesday night for Valentine's Day, and this is where we're going, and this is, you know, I was planning on wearing this, what are you thinking about? And just teaching them how to go through that process, you know, and everything. And so instead of me just leaving her a present while I'm gone, I taught him how to do what I would have done if I would have been there.
That's
well,
awesome.
Man, that helped him a lot, you know, to be able to do that. And what was cool about it is y'all talking about being flexible and not always being right and stuff. I'd got them a gift certificate to Cotton's. Well, when we got there, the people were telling them, and he had made a reservation, everything was good, but they were telling them about Planters that's up above Cotton's, and that you could go to either one and stuff and everything. And we didn't know anything about that. And they ended up going to Planters and sitting by the river and looking at everything, and they loved it. And so they were able to call me, and it's like, hey, we got a new restaurant that we really like and stuff. And we've been there a lot since then, you know. And so they got to experience something for the first time together that was a mother-son date, you know, and everything that now we do as a family, you know. And so pretty cool, you know, experience there. But yeah, when you're relationship between the son and the mother goes from just her supplying all of his needs to him looking out for her and being that gentleman for her. That's, I think, the number one way to teach them how to be good for for women in the future. Now with me, Cooper's got two pretty dominant sisters, that raised him, that taught him how to do things and everything, and they have great relationships. The problem though is that he treats them more as friends. They're bro and they're this or whatever, and if he thinks they don't look good that day, he's gonna tell them, and that kind of stuff. And so it's more of a friendship type deal and everything, even though they're all real close. And so I've learned that isn't good enough, because if he treats other girls the way he treats his sisters, even though he respects his sisters and loves them and all that, he won't ever have a relationship, and because they love him no matter what.
Exactly.
Elena goes to get something out of the fridge and he's like, fatty, and she's anything but that, hey, she'd say the same thing to him. Well, you can't say that to a girl your age that you'd like to go out with one day.
No.
So I've learned that even though Cooper had older sisters, that wasn't good enough to teach him how to be a gentleman. That was good to teach him love. That was good to teach him respect. That was good to teach him how to be responsible and that kind of stuff. But the gentleman card, I think, is easier to learn from watching the dad with the mom, and also you doing that with the mom. And so I think that's something that y'all are both fixing to encounter pretty quick.
Yep. And another thing, just something I want to mention, that I try to let them know that you don't ever get old enough to not listen to your mom. Yeah. And so, if we are on vacation, or if we're planning on going out somewhere, or if we're going to go to Monroe for the day, or whatever it may be, and Morgan asks us to be ready for a certain time, I'll make sure, okay, yes, ma'am, we're going to be ready for that time. We're ready to go. It's not a matter, this is what she asked us to do. It's not too big a deal for us to do it. We're just going to do it. We're going to respect her wishes. And just to kind of show him that, look, even though I'm an adult and, I'm a grown man, right, I'm not above putting myself and say, no, I'm not going to do what you asked me to do. And anything in the house, if she asked me to do it, and she doesn't ever mean, she's a very patient person, where like if she asks me, hey, can you help me with this in a little bit, she literally means a little bit. I don't have to get up right then and there and do it. But the example I like to show is that if all I'm doing is watching TV, or if I'm not doing anything important, yes, I can get up right there and go help. Not a big deal. And I've seen that, like you said, it this past year or so, he's starting to get into that, and it's fun to watch. Yeah. It really is, because she appreciates it big time.
Yeah, I think it's cool, because if Carter's sitting there playing a video game, or or David, Michael, or Cooper, or whoever, and they're playing a video game, and their parents ask them to do something, they may or may not do it right then. Because they're in the middle of something, you didn't say you got to do it right now. You just said, hey, at some point I want you to do this. But if a buddy texts them and says, I need you to do this, they're gone, right? Oh, yeah. And so we need to be able to, so they're not lazy. They just, need to know what the expectations are. Yeah. So I want to segue into one more section, and that's this. And y'all kind of mentioned it, and I just want to talk about it. We talked about what true manhood looks like. We talked about it doesn't look like the world says. It looks different. What about a step up from true manhood? What about being looked at as a man of integrity? Tell me, I know y'all have both had examples in your life of men of integrity that you would consider men of integrity. Tell me what it means to be a man of integrity, and is that something that we should even strive for?
I think you hit on it earlier, pretty strong. I'll let you go first.
All right. my biggest example of integrity, it'd have to be my dad. And I may be wrong on this. I don't know, but I can say with 100% sincerity that, to my knowledge, I never remember my dad taking a day off of work. Never. Didn't matter if he felt like he had the flu that day, or if he wasn't feeling it, or if he was injured or something. He did not miss work. And I contribute that to him being able to prioritize what needed to be prioritized in the manner that it had to be. Not getting sidetracked with, like Drew said earlier, making sure that we always put ourselves first, but taking care of the responsibilities and prioritizing them properly. I think that being a man of integrity, if you can stay focused on what needs to be focused on first and foremost, then you'll be able to iron out a lot of wrinkles in your life.
I know I've got one it seems so inconsequential, but obviously I was maybe 13 years old and it's still sticking with me. So maybe it wasn't. But I grew up. My grandfather traded cotton. He bought and sold cotton for a living, and we got to talking one day. Somebody had to come in and sign their contracts, and I was like, "Well, why do they sign contracts with you?" And so he's explaining the whole system to me, how all this works and whatnot. And he said, basically, they're signing a basis contract. This is how much I'm going to take off of their cotton price when they sell it through me, and it covers a bunch of expenses included with handling the cotton that I buy. And I'm like, okay. And I said, well, how much is that? You know, and he's like, well, it's about 3.5 cents, if I remember right, what he told me at the time. And I was like, okay. Well, man, you know, why are you taking 3.5 cents of their money? You know, he said, well, because of all these things. And I said, well, do other people, you know, do the same thing? He's like, well, yeah, son, all the other, you know, cotton merchants do the same thing. And I was like, well, then what's so-and-so's basis and what's so-and-so's? And he told me, and all theirs were a little bit higher than his. And I was like, well, why do they charge more? He's like, well, son, he said, some people are a little more greedy. He said, some people want a little bit more money. He said, I'm a farmer and I want to take care of my farmers. He said, I can live with this price. I don't have to have that much. I'm going to charge them just enough to cover the expenses, and I'll make a little bit of money off of it. He said, and that's why I don't charge as much as other people. He said, you know, could I make more? He said, I can make just as much as everybody else. He said, but I don't have to. He said, and I have, my customers know that, and that's why they keep coming back to me. And that stuck out to me that, you know, it wasn't about greed, it wasn't about money, it was about taking care of other people. And his integrity wasn't, I mean, it was holding to his word, but it was also treating people accordingly, the way that he wanted to be treated himself. Yep. And not taking advantage of people because there was the opportunity there.
Yep. Yeah, and so you seeing that, it stuck with you, and we know that you live by those same principles, you know. And that's pretty cool. That's pretty cool. All right, so as we get ready to wrap up, I got 2 more things I want to do. The first thing is think of, because we're talking about, you know, raising our sons up into manhood or raising our children up, you know, into adulthood. Tell me something that's happened recently with one of your children, preferably the boys because they're older, and you with Carter, that made you proud. You know, just it could be something small or something big, just something that I like to brag on our kids. You know, what's something that you'd like to brag on one of your children for that they've done recently that just, or that y'all have done together, or something that you just thought was pretty cool?
I can go first in that. This year, so last year Carter struggled big time with his schoolwork. And you could tell it wasn't because he was not smart. It was just because there was more work involved in it. He had to try a little harder. And so he struggled with that last year. And this year, I think he was 2 points away from bringing home all A's on his last report card. And so he's really put forth the effort that he's needed to put forth. And that's something that I'm proud of, because I try to teach him a lot of times the same thing I teach the guys at the center. You know, it's not necessarily about if you can't do it, it's more so about do you want to do it. And he's brought himself to the point where, hey, no, I don't really want to do this, but I can do this, so I'm going to go ahead and get it done. And so that's a proud moment I've had.
Good job, Carter, man. That's good, making those grades. All right, Drew?
I had one just a couple of days ago. I was sharing with Tyler Dean after we get done working out the other morning. We were just talking about the ball game, and Dave Michael had on last week, and he asked us if we got there in time before the game, and I was like, "Well, no, buddy. You know, the game was at 5:30. We didn't get there at 5:15. We were early, and we got there at tip-off." And I was like, "Man, I'm glad we got here earlier. We might have missed Dave Michael getting in the game." He said, "Man, I wish y'all had been there." He said, "I got to say the opening prayer at the game," and I was like, "Man, I hate I missed that, dude." And I didn't find out until about 3 days before that happened. Just guess Sonny hadn't told me, and Dave Michael hadn't either, that every morning at school he does the opening prayer.
Come on.
At Mangum Junior High, and so. Tyler was like, "Man, that's awesome." He's like, "I hear that voice," and he's like, "I didn't even register, that it was David Michael." So when David Michael and I were talking about that moment, and he's like, "Yeah, Dad," he's like, "You didn't know I did the prayer every morning?" I was like, "No, buddy, I didn't." I said, "But man, that's awesome." And he said, "Well, Dad," he said, "that's easy." He's like, "Y'all been praying with me for so long." He's like, "Man, I can get up and pray in front of people." He said, That's easy stuff." And I was sitting there thinking, proud dad moment, because that's something we've instilled in him. And then to see it go forward and him be able to get up in front of the whole school and pray and say, "That's easy."
Yeah.
I do that all the time.
Yeah, we had somebody, one of our, I don't want to call them out, but one of our leaders last night prayed from the stage for the first time. Prayed in public last night
And that
at
person
church,
did a great job.
and told everybody that, "Hey, I'm praying for the first time," and
Publicly, not for the first
publicly,
time.
Yeah, publicly. Hey, but
Let's
it's
straighten
important
that
for people to hear us pray. It's important for us to do that, and for him to make that comment that, "Hey, y'all do it all the time," he didn't see it as that big a deal. And I tell you, with Cooper is driven by money. He's got a truck most of the time, and and those things, and he likes to go to the store and buy chicken strips and stuff, and we won't pay for those things because he could eat breakfast at the house for free. He could eat breakfast at school for free. He could eat whatever they're eating at the cafeteria. He could eat at the house. And so when he goes to the store, that's on him. He goes and spends that money, and so he likes to have money to be able to do that. And so the other day we started him a stock account to where we took some money out of his account and put it into just a little stock trade account. If anybody wants one, they have one. Charles Schwab does one that you can do for children, so to where children can have their own, and they don't pay the taxes and all that on it that we do. So it's called a custodian account. But Robinhood and Robinhood's one that I use because it's just real simple. But they don't have a custodial account, but Schwab does. And so we took $200 of his money, and then I had $39 in an account already that we transferred over, and we put it in a stock account. And him and I, in the evenings, we look at stocks and look at what this one's doing or what that one's doing or what we think and everything. And he doesn't make any trades without talking to me about it and everything. And it's kind of giving us something to do. And I found another one the other day that I thought was going to be really good. That was in the $4 range. It was $4.30 when he bought it. And I said, "Hey, buddy, I don't want to sell any of your stock, but if you'd put in some more money, we could buy some of this one. I really think it's going to be great." And he said, "Okay." So we did $50. So we added $50 to it, and we bought that stock. And so we bought 12 shares of that or 11 shares, whatever it was, at $4.30. And every day since we bought it, that stock has gone up. And the other day it was over $11. So he has over doubled his money, almost tripled his money on that $50, and everything else is going up and stuff too. So just
That's
him kind of getting, a lot of chicken strips. And, and that was what was funny is the other day. So the way you count his account is anything over $300 is profit plus $11 because we have $289 in it. So the way I do math, is if he's got $400 in there, then that's the 100 plus 11, so he's got $111. Well, the other day he had $150 in the pasta. Now we've only done this account for 4 weeks. Now, it's went down some over the last couple of days, but at that point, he had made over $150 on basically a $300 investment in less than 4 weeks, And so, I want him to feel good about it. So I was texting it in the family group, and everything that, hey, look, Cooper's made this kind of money in this amount of time. And he replies back, that's a lot of chicken strips. But, you got to put it in ways that they understand.
That's
so,
right.
So here's what we're going to do to end this. Somebody told us that they really enjoy it when we tap on the table while we're doing this thing, and they said that they really enjoyed the sound that it makes and how those things happen when we do that on this episode. So here's what I wanted to do, and y'all can take just a minute and practice on your legs if you wanted to, however you want to do it. But I would like to have a drum off between y'all two to see who can come up with the best drum rhythm. Give you 7 to 10 seconds. So you could be practicing right now on your knees or whatever you want to do. But when we do it, we're going to do it on the table, and we'll do it one at a time. And then throughout this week, we're going to let our audience judge, because I could be the judge because I'm an expert in drum offs. But instead of me doing it, we'll let all of our people decide during the week.
It's going to be bad.
I kind of think Clay's setting me up on this because I do that in my, like when I'm thinking, if I'm thinking, I tap.
Yeah.
And so anytime I'm tapping, that means I'm thinking. I promise I'm not trying to do it to aggravate anybody.
Okay.
It seems that Ryan has an unfair advantage on me on this.
No, it was actually going to be me and Andrew doing this, but once again he sold the bag, and so now I decided, because that wouldn't be fair either. So now I decided it'd be more fair if y'all two did it.
Are you sure he just didn't step back from this episode just because he knew he would lose at one thing in life?
Well, it is what it is. So who would like to go first?
Well, we ought to get the bad out of the way first. So
Okay.
I will go ahead and step up and.
So I'll tell you
I'm not
when.
saying I'm gonna be good.
So I'm gonna tell you when to start, and I'll tell you when to stop. And just remember, this is a short-term deal, so you got to give it everything that you got. This is not like some long solo to where you get to start small and go up and everything.
Let's see if we had some sticks.
We
Or
don't.
something.
But make sure that it's close enough to your microphone that it picks it up, because these people enjoy the louder sounds of the microphone and everything. So, all right, you about ready?
I guess so.
All right, so we're gonna do it. We're gonna say 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. Good job. Okay, that was terrible. All right, so
Of course it was.
Ryan, you don't even have to go. You're the winner.
I want to know who mentioned to y'all that they can't stand hearing tapping on tables whenever y'all are doing this podcast.
It was somebody yesterday.
That's what I want to know.
It was like every time y'all tap on the table, it's terrible.
Great when we just do that.
Yeah, they can't stand it. So I thought this would be a great idea. How'd you ever know, Ryan?
Oh, man, I just called it intuition.
All right, here we go, Ryan. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, so I have never put on a competition where both people lost. Ever until today.
Do you want to show us an example of actually?
No, I really want to know if Andrew wants to come do it.
We're not drummers. They don't understand.
Guitars.
Andrew, would you like to get in?
I failed at Guitar Hero. I couldn't even.
You don't even have to be on the video. I think it's more the audio.
I feel like y'all have embarrassed yourselves enough this episode. I don't want to come put everyone to shame.
We appreciate it.
Well, look, we'd like to thank all of our great sponsors and all of our great listeners here on the Jesus Cartel. And y'all got anything else y'all want to add?
No, I think we covered it.
Hey, we love y'all. See y'all next time.